to the show. This is The Force Always. My name is Diz, aka David Zaman. Let's get on with the show with the news, the views, the reviews, and interviews. Now, straight on to the news. Maul, Shadow, Lord, as I'm sure a number of you have got to know already, only hours ago, Season 2 has been announced. Season 2 has been announced before even the first episode has dropped. That's right. Season 2 for Maul, Shadow Lord has been announced and will come at a later date. Just to let you know. And a little bit more about that in my views section coming up. To more news, while I've been scouring the internet looking for possible tickets for Mandalorian and Grogu, there is nothing on sale as yet. Just to let you know, Mandalorian and Grogu, the movie that's coming in a short time now, no pre-sales have been put out there at all. And yeah, so that is pretty much the ticket watch, as I would say. Ticket watch at the moment. Nothing at all. To more news, I did speak last time about Star Wars Celebration. That's going to be in LA next year, 2027, April 1 to April 4. I think that's the exact dates. And I was talking about the hotels. Well, I have been actually investigating by calling the hotels myself in LA. And no tickets for that time period are on sale for those, well, reservations, not tickets. Reservations for those hotels are available. The earliest time is going to be sometime in June. That's what has been said to me at the moment. Sometime in June of this year, 2026, for April 2027 reservations if you want to come to Star Wars Celebration in LA next year. And I've been looking at the really close ones for good reason. If you've been to Star Wars Celebration, which I've been to 3, and they are hardcore, especially the ones in America. Whoo! They are hardcore Star Wars fans there. Japan as well, but in a bit more different way. Anyway, so that is pretty much the news for this time around. As I just took my Mandalorian pill. Sipping the old coffee. Anyway, let's get into views. Views is my story ideas that I have for Star Wars. I accept the story for what it is, from start to finish. I know there's ups and downs, there's goods and bads. But you know what? Star Wars is still Star Wars. I still love it, and that's it. And I think personally, some of you guys out there, they don't like Star Wars that much these days. You know what? It's an area of movie making, which is a story, which is more than life in a lot of our ways. That is, always something to go back to and see what happens. Anyway, my story idea is to do with the Maul, no, I nearly said Darth Maul, Maul Shadow Lord Season 2 announcement. I did say in my last video there wouldn't be really much there to really talk about, but I did touch on a particular person, Kira, which is seen in Solo, A Star Wars Story. That's her character's name. At the end of Solo, A Star Wars Story, we get a glimpse of Maul and Kira being in contact with him. Obviously, there's some sort of tie-in there. I'd say apprentice and master. That is probably the only area that you could really have something juicy to say. I am a little bit skeptical that, if they don't concentrate on something like that, it's pretty much going to be sort of the same thing we get in season 1, and you really want the movie, the story to move forward in an interesting way and have reason to. And I think, concentrating the story on Kira as my story idea, probably people's stories ideas as well, that would be great for season 2. The only skepticism I have on my half is that I'm wishing it's just not going to be more CSI Galaxy, meaning, just all about crime and just ongoing, because I don't think it would really work with Star Wars, even though the crime lord, the warlord, sort of industry in Star Wars is great, but I don't know. You gotta. It can go only so far, and but concentrating on the possible apprentice, I'd say apprentice of Maul towards Solo, a Star Wars story timeline. That would be a great inclusion, and yeah, I look forward to that. That's my story idea that I'm sure many of you thought about there as well. But anyway, put it out there for myself. Anyway, so let's get into now reviews. Reviews is going to be something that is really, 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 really unusual to collect. This is sort of a bit of a collection thing that I didn't really mean to have it being 100% intact. But this is a packet of chips when Rogue One came out. It's actually full. There's no way I'm going to open this for the sake of the stench or whatever's mustering inside of this thing. But this is actually called Chex Mix. This is a particular brand that I actually got whilst in America. I got this when I was in America one time. And it was a Rogue One special Chex Mix thing. We can't get Chex Mix here in Australia. I don't think you've ever been able to get it unless you go to one of those specialised American sort of stands. But this here, I didn't mean to keep it in its pack, but it just stayed. And so I'm just going to leave it as is. But it is a unique item, Rogue One Chex Mix pack. Anyway, and I'm going to give this, for the sake of being hardcore, keeping something like this intact, I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. I actually thought Rogue One was great when it came out. This is a 10 out of 10 just because the insanity of myself keeping it for this long intact. Anyway, that is my review for this time around. So now let's get into interviews. Interviews is my questions I usually get on my last particular video, and so if you're going to send in the comments, that's just a comment or a question, even if it's a trivia question. I am not Mr. Trivia, just to let you know, but I'll give it a shot, either myself or Google, and see what we can do. But one of our favourite commenters or interviewers, you could say, from afar, and he's been on the show before. He is a friend of mine, but you don't have. You can just be on this comment section how you want, when you want. I'd love to hear from you guys. Anyway, Michael from Werribee South. I should also say today is Good Friday. So today is Good Friday. Will it be a Good Friday? Let's see from the interview questions. Michael from Werribee South says, Legacy. If Luke had gone with Lando to find Han Solo immediately after The Empire Strikes Back, how would his journey have changed? I think it's a pretty simple answer to that. In my opinion, not much. Whether he did it straight away or not, maybe not having such a delicate plan in place, doing it too quick, too rushed, could have caused implications to fail on their behalf. But not really much. Just something that's pretty straight or easily answered there. How would his journey have changed? Not much. There's not really many big ramifications out of that. Anyway, the next question from Michael from Werribee South. Personality shift. Does Luke's cold and distant demeanour in Return of the Jedi represent character growth, being humbled, or a departure from his Everman roots? Everman. Don't know what that is, but I will say, I think I know what he's sort of getting at. I reckon there was two things at play. I think Luke Skywalker, the character, just in case you didn't know, I think there was a humbling on his behalf, where he was, there, where he was in his life. He had conquered the Death Star. He was on another mission. He was, almost a Jedi Master. He was really, in touch with Yoda at that time. Sort of got a great set of training setting tools. But I think it was a humbling. But I also do think he was um, attempting to disguise himself to be of the dark side with certain people. Because when he entered Jabba's palace, if he come off like a regular Jedi, it would have caused a little bit of a commotion with just amongst the aliens and droids that don't know much about, the dark side and the good side that much, and they just sort of take, merit from what they see or hear. And it would have caused, oh my goodness, there's a Jedi. Let's get people together and destroy him before he enters. That type of stuff. But I do think it was more humbling. It was also a bit of, he was trying to cloud people's thoughts in thinking that he was rolling with the dark side. But I think he was also in a crossover stage where he could have crossed over to the dark side. So he was in a neutral stage at that point. But I do think it's more about the humbling. He was humbled at that point as a person, not just being a Jedi or becoming a Jedi Master. But I think it was just a general humbling. When you get older, you become a bit more, taught in life and things like that. Anyway, that is the answer to that question. The next question from Michael, where we start, is the Jedi path. Was Luke right to try to rebuild the Jedi Order using the old ways, or was his later decision to go into exile a realistic response to the failures of the Jedi? Well, the reason why he went into exile, this is in the period of after Return of the Jedi, Episode 6, all the way into Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Jedi to Jedi, that's an interesting connection. But he was just, he felt that his presence was causing problems in the universe, and he thought he'd exile, especially after in the Force Awakens period, his students had, one particular student, which was... I think it's his nephew, had just joined the dark side and destroyed the whole Jedi academy that he was sort of trying to build. And he was just, devastated. He just thought he's best to stay away, not and connect with anything, including the Force, so no one could find him. No one, not even a Force user, could find him because he just thought it was just causing too much trouble being out there. And but I think... rebuilding the Jedi Order using the old ways. At this stage in the Star Wars timeline, in Earth years, meaning by this time, we all got to know Jedi was a whole lot of set of strict rules. Because back in the 80s, the whole Jedi Order was a very loose thought idea of all these strict rules, and it was nothing really just to sort of expand on besides the idea of it. But now we were, in the 2000s, and the whole Jedi Order really did have a whole lot of set of rules, strict guidelines, and I think that Luke was rebuilding the Jedi Order using the old ways is actually making sense, because that is the tools in making the Jedi Order. But for him to exile was a personal decision. So it's a two-parter there. Yes, if you're going to teach the Jedi, you need to teach the Jedi in the actual rules of the Jedi, because then it would not be a Jedi Order if you were not teaching that. So you really do need to sort of stick to the guidelines. It's pretty simple. It's like if you want to be an astronaut, you've got to learn to be an astronaut, not what you think an astronaut is, but, or the findings and what you've got to do to be an astronaut as just an idea. So rebuilding in the Jedi Order in the old ways makes sense, even though it is a bit frowned upon in some of the rules, but that is the rules. And for him to go into exile was, I think, more of a a logic and emotional sort of reason. Logical because it was causing disruption, this whole Jedi versus Sith versus dark side sort of thing, and he thought he'd stay away, not be a part of it. But emotional because he felt so bad, and so he thought he'd just hide or not be found, more or less. But anyway, that is the answer to that question. Now the final question from Michael from Werribee South, and yet please, I'll just say again, anyone can send their comments, questions, or whatever you want deemed appropriate to the channel. Please send them in. But anyway, the final question of today, the name. Now I'm gonna say this in how Michael has written this. Is Rev justified in Takina the name Skywalker at the end of the saga, or should she have remained just Rey to forge her own path? That is how Michael has written his question. Goodness gracious, you need to get a little bit of not so excited ways about when writing a question, but let me say the question in what I think he's saying. The name, is Rey justified in taking the name Skywalker at the end of the Skywalker, or should she have renamed just Rey to forge her own path? Now this is a really, really good question. One of the hates that you'll get amongst Star Wars fans, I won't say what percentage, I'll say amongst Star Wars fans, is that at the end of Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, Rey technically named herself Rey Skywalker. Looking upon the two ghostly, Force ghost images of Luke and Leia, accepting and being proud of it. It was like a connecting moment. I personally, to this day, think that the idea of her being called Rey Skywalker is justified, especially with the acceptance of the Force ghosts of Luke and Leia being there, but also, which is probably lost. Now, when Luke and Leia were born, Luke went to Tatooine and was known as Luke Skywalker, which is a bit weird because if you had the surname Skywalker, you'd be, a bit obvious to the Empire at that time. But Leia had been sent to Alderaan and was named Leia still, but it had the surname Organa, Leia Organa, which is technically an adopted name. Besides her first name is the real name. But Leia Organa is an adopted name. It's the same thing with Rey Skywalker. She was at a point where she didn't want to be a Palpatine. She's actually a Palpatine, from the Emperor. And she's all about good. I think the idea of her being Rey Skywalker is not cringeworthy, is actually justified, because someone who's being adopted and, its acceptance of their family in that life is actually, it's all about good. And you've got to feel for people who are being adopted. They've been, either pushed or pulled away from the particular family for whatever reason. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad reason why someone, it has to be one of your children, one of my children, whatever children has to be put out to adoption. It's just something you can do, and you're thinking of the best interest of that child. And obviously, Rey at that time was a very lost individual, and I think one of the biggest overrated things amongst not all, amongst Star Wars fans, is that the Rey Skywalker thing was just cringe and just wrong. I think it's a valid ending point to the whole Skywalker Saga, Episode 9, A Rise of Skywalker. I think it's valid. And I think the idea of her being, known that she's acceptance of being adopted into that family, being, guided by her fatherly figure, which was Luke at that point. And I think in the name of right, in the name of good, I think this is justified. Amongst people out there who would think I'm absolutely wrong, or a sequel or Disney lover, I am a Star Wars lover. I love Star Wars. Wherever it goes, I will go with it. I will maybe say yes or no, or say this is good or bad, but you know what? This is the story that's been told by the people who own it, and they can say what they want. You obviously would like, opportunities not to be missed. But this, to be honest, is a great moment, a very endearing moment in the whole Skywalker saga. Where Luke and Leia had passed, they were Force ghosts, saw Rey in the distance, or were there for whatever reason, and she was trying to figure out what's her last name, and sort of had that sort of visual eye contact communication, and just said Rey Skywalker. I think it's justified. Anyway, that is the show for this time around. If you really want to subscribe to the channel, I'm here 3 or 4 times a week with the news, the views, the reviews, and interviews. And remember, next week we've got more Shadow Lord. I will be doing closely after the show has aired, reactions or reviews or whatever on that. But there's still this week to get through. And until... So the channel here is called The Force Always on YouTube. Send in your messages on the YouTube channel. I don't have Instagram or TikTok or Twitter at this stage in full sort of rotation, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Just send it to the actual last video, which this is the last video. And until next time, my friends, keep rocking.